أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد الفاتح المغلق والخاتم لما سبق نصر الحق والحق والهادي إلى صراطك المستقيم وعلى آله حق قدره ومقداره العظيم. Alhamdulillah. We are continuing in our text of the letters of counsel of Shaykh Ibrahim, and yes, radiallahu anhu translated by the brother Dawood, inshallah, may Allah bless him and preserve him. And we are taking these letters, having these classes with Shaykh Mahy, and in his absence, he's advised me to give the classes. And so today we're continuing in the final letter of the advices. And we went over part of this letter, but this is the 30th letter is a letter of counsel in poetic verse. So this was the counsel that he gave in poetry. And obviously I can only imagine how difficult it is to translate in general, but translating poetry. Myself as a poet, I can only imagine someone trying to translate my poetry because so much is done in a language that would make that difficult. Mashallah, our brother has done a great service for us to maybe even glean just some of the benefit of the letters. And pardon me, I'm not at home, but we stopped here in Barnes and Noble to conduct class because as we remember, the Master of Allah saying that the best, the deed that's most beloved to Allah. When asked about which deed is most beloved to Allah, he said the deed that is consistent, even if it's small. So we didn't want to. We try not to, unless under extreme circumstances, and cancel the class. And so Shaykh is not available. I'll do it. And try our best, even if it's short. So I'm just going to take a section of this letter to reflect upon. We finished about the first third of the poem, and so and just to recap, the Shaykh, of course, Shaykh Ibrahim, Shaykh al-Islam, is praising Allah and praising the Prophet ﷺ and praising the Quran itself. Then he is talking about, and much of this poem has to do with the relationship with the human beings, the trials and tribulations, and the human thing and the human community among the believing people, among our brothers and sisters, and even among the disbelieving people. And so he is saying, sufficing oneself with Allah, with Allah's decree concerning one's allies and one's enemies, one's blessings and one's trials and tribulations, and seeking Allah in secret and in the open, and to know that Allah is the only doer. So whatever you're finding that is pleasing, and alhamdulillah, and whatever you're finding is displeasing, mashallah. So alhamdulillah, as we say, all praises to Allah in every state. So we'll continue overlapping a little bit from last week, saying, Allah, Allah, O my people, no, never will a child defeat you with patience, so seek help. Do not ever strike, do not ever curse. And if you are struck, then be patient, and you will be given patience. When you look to those before you who are God-fearing, they pardoned and overlooked when others plotted. They have guided you to the path of victory, so try to be patient, because victory is with patience, and the higher are those who forgive. If they prevent us from going to the house of Allah, it is not the first time, but the people before us have been patient. And let us follow the example as those before us followed, for we have in the chosen one an example, and the will gives victory. Alhamdulillah. So here the Shaykh is emphasizing the attributes of patience in dealing with trials and tribulation from his enemies, and the enemies of Islam, and the enemies of the Haqq, the enemies of the Rasul, advising patience and not to become overwhelmed internally. And he says, don't ever strike and don't ever curse. If you are struck, then be patient. Saying patience. With patience, because victory is with patience, and higher are those who forgive. In this line, obviously, because victory is with patience, obviously reminds us of the line of the Quran, there are verses of the Quran where Allah says that surely He is with the patient ones. Because here, Shaykh is saying victory is with patience, and Allah is mentioning He Himself is with the patient. But we know for sure that if one is with Allah, then for sure they're going to have the victory. So Allah, being with Allah and the victory come together. So we can understand this line is because victory is with patience, and we can understand that Allah, surely Allah is with the patient ones, as it says in the Quran. Then this is the path to achieving victory. And this is concerning the disbelieving people, how much space he's making and patience he's having. So then how much more when we reflect upon the Ruh Adab and his other advices on how much more also in this collection, not just Ruh Adab, but subhanAllah, in this collection, his emphasis on kindness and patience with the brothers and the sisters in the path, that he emphasizes it even more with them. Here he's saying, be patient so that you may have victory. Here he's saying, be patient, and Allah will cause you to overwhelm them. But when it's with our brothers and sisters, we are seeking patience, not to overwhelm them. We're not seeking patience because we're hoping in quote unquote victory over them. We're being patient because, mashallah, Allah is testing us with our brothers and our sisters, and Allah is testing our brothers and sisters with ourselves. And so surely we fall short, and we fall short in our estimation of each other, or we fall short to the high expectations that we have of each other. And sometimes we forget, sometimes in a state of weakness, sometimes in a state of forgetfulness, sometimes in a state of being overwhelmed by our own nafus, our own nafs, that we behave poorly. And so in the way that we would love to be forgiven, we have to be quick and ready to forgive. And I wanted to mention here, we mentioned it before, but I wanted to mention here that there are independent sunnahs, acts of the sunnah, and there are contingent acts of the sunnah. What I mean by that is that an independent act of the sunnah, if that's a good word to use, it's like, I want to pray 2 rak'ah before Fajr. I want to fast Monday and Thursday. I want to give sadaqah. I want to go to sleep on my right side. All of these things are the sunnahs the Messenger of Allah. I want to be kind. I want to be generous. I want to be smiling. I want all of these things. A person could decide to do them, exert, struggle against their own selves and do them. And there's nothing to stop a person from being generous, believing in Allah, from doing all of this. Then there's some sunnahs that are contingent. Being forgiving. So the sunnah probably deal with the backbiting, for example, because Shaykh Ibrahim, as we know, he dealt with that very heavily throughout his life. How to deal with the slander, he dealt with that very heavily for all of his life. And especially as Allah, who was raising his rank, the envy only became more extreme and more severe. And the slanderous lies only became more ridiculous and absurd and farther away from the truth. And so this affair of how to practice the sunnah. What is the sunnah of what some standards you do? This sunnah, you can't just practice because maybe no one's slandering it. So you can't just practice it. You have to wait for the occasion for someone to slander you. It's a contingent sunnah. It's contingent upon someone else doing something. And that's the only way you can practice that sunnah. So if when he's mentioning here about forgiveness, if you are struck, then be patient, and you will be given patience. We looked at those before you who are God-fearing, they parted and overlooked when others plotted. So if we want to be one of these people who are God-fearing and overlooked when others plotted, first we have to be plotted against in order to practice that sunnah, to practice that way of the sunnah. We have to first be put in a position to do so. This is perhaps one of the reasons why Shaykh Ibrahim says that for the one who truly knows Ar-Rahman, he faces his trials as smiling man. That because when someone you spot, it's a moment, oh, I'm being slandered. They feel an excitement because now this is a sunnah that's cut off from me that I don't get to practice because I'm not often slandered. So when they hear, oh, they slandered me, it's like a moment of rejoicing. They feel happy because now they get to practice a sunnah that was otherwise cut off from them. If someone has been struck, as Shaykh Ibrahim was mentioned here. And then he goes on to mention being driven from your homes and being all these other things. We can only practice these sunnahs. We can only practice these actions of Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman and Ali. We can only practice these actions of Jahan to Jan and Shaykh Ibrahim. Yes, only when we've experienced some of what they've experienced of what is displeasing. So this is why we're saying Alhamdulillah fi kulli hal, because when Allah is doing what we like, we say Alhamdulillah, because then Allah is pleasing us and Allah is, mashallah, is pleasing us, you know. He's given us what we like. And so we're thankful to Allah for that. When He gives us what we dislike, we're also saying Alhamdulillah, because now we get to practice the kind of worship that is cut off. So no, when you see a person whose life is filled with trials and tribulations, and this is in a letter, Alhamdulillah, Shaykh Mahy just texted me just now, so it gives me a feeling that Alhamdulillah, we take that as a good sign. So if we look at the letter before this, I don't know if it's the one directly before this, but when he's Shaykh Ibrahim is talking about the fitna that was placed on people before us. And here he's mentioning again the people before us and what they experienced. And if you see a person going through great trials and tribulations, he says it's the ignorant ones who will say like, oh, this is because Allah is displeased with this person or these people. This is why He sent a plague. This is why He sent a pandemic. This is why He sent. So He said these are people that don't understand religion. But there are people that are more righteous than us that got what is more severe than us. So He said these are people that don't understand the affair. Because in every opportunity is an opening for the believer person. Whether Allah is being very kind and generous, and jamali with them, very beautiful and kind and latif with them, alhamdulillah. And when Allah is testing them, He's giving them a chance. He's giving them a chance to exert themselves and gives them a chance to prove themselves, not just to Allah, but for the servant to even see himself or herself. What will they do under these conditions? This is why we watch the movies we watch. This is why we have the tales, the stories, that no matter what culture, no matter what time period, the tales are the same. There's a hero. And the hero is great, met some great challenge, some great challenge, a challenge that is beyond the hero. Yet the hero somehow finds it in himself to succeed. Why do we watch these stories over and over and over? 100 million stories like this, whether it's a new Marvel movie or the tale of the Odyssey or the Knights of the Round Table, or stories of Camelot or Shakespeare or whatever. That same theme. There's a hero. He or she wants something. There's great trials, tribulation between him or her and getting it, but they overcome them. What if there was a boxing movie like Creed or Rocky, but the opponent that they fought was like a little girl, like a 12-year-old little girl that didn't know how to box. Then he goes and beats the little girl up and moves over like this. We don't find any pleasure in that. It's no good. Why? The box has to be bigger, stronger, more experienced, more dangerous. That's the only reason that we watch the movie. Likewise, with our own lives, when Allah places a fitna on you, that's the opportunity to be a hero, to demonstrate in front of Allah. This is what I have. This is what I can do with what you've given me. But we have to wait for these opportunities because again, these are acts of worship and service that we can't just do. You have to wait. So to continue, then let us follow that example as with those of us, as those before us also follow. For we have the chosen one, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, an example, and the real gives victory. Yes, our God left us home with his family, but after he was impeded from performing Umrah, the one who would harm the religion of the Prophet ﷺ exulted and rejoiced. So do not let the actions of the rejectors confuse you. Allah has a mighty conquering army. So we look ever past the offense to his victory. So what he's mentioning here, obviously, is a time during the time of the Messenger after the Hijrah, which was the first opportunity that the companions, the Prophet ﷺ and his companions were going to make Umrah. They were going to visit the Holy House. And this was a big deal because imagine these people are from Mecca, so they're used to being with the Kaaba, and they missed the Kaaba, they missed Mecca. And so this is the time finally that they were going to go and return. They were stopped outside from entering the sacred precincts for basically for political reasons. The Meccans didn't want to be seen as that they failed. They were really between a rock and a hard place, because if they let him in, then it's like, oh wow, this person who you kicked out and who's been talking reckless about your guns, you let him back in the city and he can come in with his people like no problem. So they thought that was going to make them look weak. On the other hand, if they didn't let him, if they were seen burying him, they are the custodians of the Holy House and they're supposed to be welcoming everyone. So then that would have looked bad on the Quraysh as well. Anyway, they made the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. And the Treaty of Hudaybiyah prevented the Prophet and his companions from entering into the holy precincts for that year. And there were other conditions to it that were very difficult for many of the believers to accept. But the Messenger of Allah some accepted them because Allah knew what they didn't know, subhanAllah. And Allah was planning a victory for them, and had already written a victory for the believing people, although the disbelievers thought they had the upper hand. So they rejoiced. The disbelievers, the Quraysh, they rejoiced because they thought they got the upper hand. But in truth, they didn't get the upper hand. And long story short, without going through the detailed history, this time of the Treaty of Hudaybiyah ended up being the greatest explosion of the dawah of the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And there were more and more Muslims entering, more and more people entering into the fold of Islam. And when they broke the treaty, the Quraysh broke the treaty, or someone from the Quraysh broke the treaty. And this is what gave the opening for the Fatih of Mecca, for the conquering of Mecca by the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the whole affair, although they were rejoicing, thinking they got the upper hand, the end of that affair was the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, stepping into Mecca with 10,000, at the head of 10,000 men, mashallah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and knocking down the idols at the Kaaba one by one, and understanding these idols were cemented with lead into the earth, drilled into the earth. They weren't just standing around, and just with his staff, he would just tap it and would knock down one by one. And the slave, mashallah, the one who was once a slave, but now he became a true slave of Allah. It's truly Abdullah. This is the one, Allah, who climbs on top of the Kaaba. Imagine this man was from this place, he was a slave, and then he climbs on top of the Kaaba, his feet on top of the Kaaba, and says, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. This is, now mind you, this victory, clear and present victory, such that there was nearly no violence. The victory was so complete, there was no violence. When you read the text of Sun Tzu, The Art of War, what they talk about, the peak of military strategy is when the victory is accomplished without fighting. And this is what we see in Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Mustafa Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He stands on top of the has Bilal climb to the top of the Kaaba and say, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. And only a short time before they won't even allow him into the city. And look how clear Allah made the victory. Of course, it reminds us of the ayahs of Quran, either جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفره إنه كان توابا. See the help of Allah in the victory. That's the fact. إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون, people entering into the deen of Allah in droves, because after the Fatih of Mecca, this is when the whole of Arabia, tribe by tribe, province by province, fell under the banner of La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it was a great victory. So when Shaykh Ibrahim is saying, and let us follow that example as those before us also followed, for we have been chosen with an example, and the real gives victory. Yes, our guide that left us home with his family made the hijrah, but after he was impeded from performing Umrah. The one who would harm the religion of the Prophet, who wanted to harm the religion of the Prophet, he exalted and rejoiced. So do not let the actions of the rejectors confuse you. Allah has a mighty conquering army. So we look ever past the effects to his victory. MashaAllah. So this is what we're expecting for ourselves. If we practice patience in the big affairs and the big affairs and the small affairs. That is what we do. We try our best. So we'll stop here. Forgive me, I said just got a message that it was hard to hear me. I'm sorry. In our conditions here, we tried our best. And inshallah, we'll resume next week. Inshallah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك واستغفر الله ربي واتوب اليه لا اله الا انت سبحانك اني كنت من الظالمين ربنا اتنا في الدنيا حسنه وفي الاخره حسنه وقنا عذاب النار اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد الفاتح لما اغلق وخاتم لما سبق نصر حق الحق والهادي الى صراطك المستقيم وعلى اله حق قدره ومقداره العظيم سبحان ربك رب العزه عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين الحمد لله. Allah bless you and please forgive me for any of my errors. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.